Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. Today, I'm talking really putting your weight loss plan together using fasting, macros, and calories, just because I know there's a lot of confusion around this. Understandable, because every time you turn around, there's a different plan, different approach. There's somebody saying something different about fasting and work. I cut calories. Some people wonder, you don't worry about calories, just focus on macros. There's for every person, there's another opinion. For every weight loss success story, there's a slightly different approach. But for the most part, um, every successful weight loss plan, a weight loss story, manipulates or controls usually one or usually two, actually, at least one, usually two, sometimes all three different levers, let's say, which is basically food timing, or how often you're eating, um, the macronutrient, like how much of protein, carbs, fat, whatever, and then how much you're eating, how many calories. There's usually, and so think of those as the three levers: as food timing or meal frequency, um, what you're eating, the macros, and then how much. And so manipulating those levers is what gets you to a point of success. Okay, but those are the three main levers, and how you manipulate those. You could certainly manipulate them all wrong and go nowhere. And that's the majority of cases. That's really what our U.S. guidelines, most of the Western world, the guidelines are basically, you're pointing in the wrong direction for the most part. Oversimplified, kind of ignoring biochemistry, ignoring how food interacts with our body. They're looking purely at calories as the first and main and primary um, lever, really, or needed element to control. Um, that just, it doesn't make sense to me, and I'll explain why. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible. So basically, you have a simple guide or simple plan, but in some cases, explain why. So you understand why. You can go forward with confidence, understanding why something is working a certain way, or why I'm explaining that I have found it works a certain way. My understanding of it, uh, through personal experience, as well as the experience of people I interact with who are in my field, people I've interacted with who have been guests on the podcast, um, where consistently seems to show success across the majority of people. And I think that's what we need to go with. You can always find outliers. People say, I just did this and this worked for me. Great. Who knows what their age was? Who knows what their activity level, their hormone level? We need we need to find guidelines that work for the majority of people in all states. So whether you're pretty insulin resistant, you just put on 15, 20 pounds, it just takes a little to get that off, and of course, almost anything works there. Uh, or you're insulin resistant and, excuse me, yeah, I may have said that backwards the last one, but basically you're insulin sensitive versus insulin resistant, and you've got more than 20 pounds to lose. You haven't exercised much or in a while, or maybe there's a reason you can't. Um, and your diet's just all over the place, right? And it's been that way. And you're dealing with some of the um, biochemical or health repercussions of that comes with insulin resistance, some of the downstream effect. And it's going to take a little bit of time to reverse that until you get to the point where your body will start letting go of stored fat. It needs to work for you too. It needs to work in those cases as well, or we really don't have something that lines up with our biochemistry. If it doesn't reverse the problem that has gone really too far down the road and is approaching the level of disease or in a disease state, like diabetes, type 2 diabetes, then we can't say that it really works consistently. We can't say this is why this works. And that's, again, my opinion. But and there's going to be success stories with different levels of emphasis on each of those levers. But as long as they've manipulated usually two of those levers in the right way, they could see some success. They can have some success. So it's not that there's several ways to approach it. but it's usually manipulating 2 or 3 of those main components. Basically, I have a plan that consistently works. I'm going to explain it. It's very simple. You need a simple plan, sustainable plan. I'm manipulating those, but caloric intake, in my opinion, should not be the primary lever. Should not be your first lever. It's a great lever to have, but I think putting the other 2 in place first allows the caloric deficit to be much less painful, and it offsets any sort of possible downside of a caloric deficit, like we all know, yo-yo dieting or a lowered metabolism, lowered metabolic rate, so that when you get back to, eating, or you eat a little bit off, or you kind of stay in maintenance mode, everything jumps back up because your metabolic rate is lowered because you've been under eating and haven't allowed your body. I'll explain this, but basically most low calorie diets, while they cut calories, they don't, because of the way they're structured, they don't allow enough time in the day for your body to access stored fat, because they're constantly stimulating insulin and blocking fat burning. So let's get into this. That is the goal, though, is to get out of the way, get out of our body's way, and allow it to burn stored fuel, stored fat, right? So it may take some time for some people to allow the hormones to reset, to allow the fat burning, and time doing things correctly, those hormones to reset. Some people might see the weight loss start within a week or 2, and others it may take 4 or 5 weeks for things to reset. Maybe they're losing some size. They're feeling better, less bloating in the gut because the diet's just better, but the scale doesn't move right away. Okay. Hormones are resetting. And so it may take some time of doing things properly, but letting your body adjust to the new habits, and then your body will follow those habits, will follow your new lifestyle. So it needs to be something that's, again, sustainable, that doesn't throw your body's body chemistry off, but actually realigns it. And it's not creating an unsustainable effect of lowering your metabolic rate. Okay. Gets out of the way, let your metabolism stay high, but have greater access to fat to offset the deficit. So, and without stimulating hunger, which frequent eating often does as well. We'll get into that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So let's understand something about food. Food is not just fuel. We've heard food is fuel. Well, that kind of feeds that whole caloric mindset, low calorie, like food is just calories. So it doesn't matter at that point, what you eat, as long as you're eating less, right? If you think of food as just fuel, but food isn't just fuel, it's information and it's structure for our cells. So yeah, if you say food is fuel and you think it's just low calories, we're ignoring hormones. We're ignoring the effect of food and the information it sends to our body, and the hormones that respond to that food, to different types of food. Ignores insulin, glucagon, ghrelin, leptin, several other. So basically, fat burning, fat storing hormones, as well as hunger stimulating or satiety stimulating, like leptin makes us feel satisfied, full. Okay, ghrelin stirs up hunger or makes us feel hungry. We need all of them, but we don't need them overactive. We don't need them out of balance, right? So we have to pay attention to how what we eat affects those hormones. It does not need to be complicated. So don't let your eyes glaze over. Simple plan, explaining with a little nerdiness so you understand, generally speaking, why it works. So, and I think it helps you stick with it a little better if you know why something works. It's not a black box concept, algorithm, not sure why it works, not sure what happens, and then you're kind of blind in your faith about it. The other thing is it ignores the structural needs. Strictly food as fuel approach ignores the structural needs, as if our bodies can turn any food we eat into needed structure, needed protein. We're made up of protein, fat, and minerals, basically, and water. But our structures are made of protein. So cellular wise, we have folded proteins, different types, not just the kind that are used in muscle, but collagens and different types, a lot of different types of proteins that make up our cell structure. Fat, cholesterol make up the cell wall, cell membrane. Not we don't have a wall. Plants have cell walls. We have cell membranes. So they allow nutrients to come and go, energy to come and go. But they're made up of it's fat and cholesterol, as well as other structures in our brain. Largest depository of cholesterol in our body. I think it's 25%. It's 25% of our body's cholesterol is in our brain. 15% of our brain weight is cholesterol. Cholesterol, not just fat. Then there's fat on top of that. Through their myelin sheath, so the sheath over our nervous system, our nerves through our body. Cholesterol. Okay. We need fat to a degree, a certain amount of it. We definitely need protein for structure. We even use it for energy to some degree, which I will explain. Minerals, which can come in animal foods, it can come in some vegetables. What we notice, there's a macronutrient missing there that we don't need for structure. I'm gonna let you, by process of elimination, figure that one out. But yeah, there's a macronutrient there that we don't really need for structure or function. We just use it for excess energy, for intense energy, to replace energy. And it has a role there. But if your goal is weight loss and you really want to tap into stored fuel rather than what you're eating most of the time, you might want to limit that one or leave it out completely if you can. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible, trying to get too nerdy, but I do want you to understand why it works. So very important, how often we eat. Okay. So most of you are familiar with, if you've listened to even one of my podcasts, intermittent fasting, some level of intermittent fast, some level of time restricted eating. In other words, limiting the hours in the day in which you are taking in your meals. Okay. And even the number of meals, how often you eat. So basic level of managing weight, even maintenance, just maintenance, it would be 3 meals a day, no snacks, or it could be 2 meals and a snack. Okay. But that's essentially 3 times that you're eating within a 12-hour period of the day, 8 to 8, whatever that is. That's basic minimum. If you're snacking, you're eating all over the place, you're eating across a 16-hour window, you may want to start there. You may want to start with just limiting yourself to 3 good whole food meals a day, or 2 meals and one smaller meal, like snack, if we want to call it that, but still 3 meals, no snacking in between, and no super fatty drinks in between, no intake of calories between 3 meals. Okay. Good place to start within a 12-hour window. If you're used to getting up and start eating at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, you're eating at 7, and you're eating until 9, 10 o'clock at night, that's a problem if you're trying to lose weight. Honestly, you got to restrict it to a 12-hour window. You need to limit the times that you eat and how often you eat. Now, past that point, move forward to really get assertive with your weight loss. You really want to restrict that a bit more. You know, 2 meals a day would be ideal. And it works for most people, compressed into an 8-hour eating window. So someone would say it's, for example, 11 to 7, 12 to 8, whatever. If it's shorter than that, great. 12 to 6, awesome. Great. Some people can make it work with 10-hour window. If they do I know my clients do 3 meals within a 10-hour window. They're active, they're working out. Could they be more aggressive? Sure, they can be more aggressive. If that's working for them, great. Across the board, 8 hours works pretty aggressively with 2 meals a day, or maybe 2 meals and a very small snack, but try to keep it within the 8-hour eating window. Okay. With good food choices, not just eating whatever you want. It's not pizza and oatmeal and muffins and bagels and, you get my meaning, peanut butter, that kind of stuff. High calorie, high energy foods that are nutrient poor, really, that give you almost nothing nutrient wise or macronutrient wise. It's mostly starch and fat together, or starch and fat and not a lot of protein. So 2 meals a day, we'll get into what you're eating in a bit, but 2 meals a day with an 8-hour window, prime, do that. Next level from that, if you want to push it a bit, would be to pick 1 or 2 days a week in which you do a 24-hour fast. You do 1 meal a day. Like it could be dinner to dinner, it could be lunch to lunch. your choice, whatever works best for you and your schedule and how you feel. But 1 or 2 days, 24-hour fast, continuing with on the other days, the 2 meals a day in the 8-hour window. So get the 2 meals a day in the 8-hour window down first. Then if you want to add a 24-hour fast, see how that works for you. I still do that myself as a maintenance thing. Just keep my fat burning metabolism primed, as a point of discipline, to not be mastered by food, but also, again, another, like I treat it like a workout for my metabolic system, for my fat burning system. I might do some cardio that day. I might just walk. I don't usually work out that day. If you want to, you can. It's just how I do it. But I'm not aggressively trying to lose weight. Okay. I treat it as another stress. Okay. Like a workout. Okay. It's a metabolic stress. It's a metabolic workout. 24-hour fast. It's not too difficult actually, anymore. It's very simple. When I first started it, yeah, I felt some hunger. Yeah, I felt, but I learned to manage it, and now it's become quite normal because my body can access fat pretty easily without a lot of effort. I would say ideal, stay hydrated during that time. Water with maybe I like to add some unsweetened electrolytes to it. I use ReLyte, made by Redmond salt. So it's made from minerals from Redmond, from the salt mine in Utah. Great product. They have different flavors. Just add a scoop to some water, shake it up. And if you start fasting, intermittent fasting is new to you, you might feel you get this like headaches. If you might feel lightheaded, like your blood sugar is kind of dropping, or blood sugar, but probably blood pressure is actually the case, because you're starting to lose a lot of fluid by not taking in carbohydrates. Usually you're on a low carb diet, and just not eating as often. You're not going to store as much water in your kidneys. Now your blood pressure will come down. If it's high, it will come down to normal. You can normalize your blood pressure this way. However, you might notice that in that it affects your energy. If you have normal blood pressure comes down too low, you're not in danger, but you just feel a little bit low energy, a little groggy. Maybe you have a headache at first. A lot of that can be solved with just the minerals from electrolytes, so magnesium and potassium. Put in your water, because water is not always what we're really losing when dehydrated. It's just out of balance electrolytes, out of balance magnesium, potassium, and sodium. So you restore those, keep them steady while fasting, while eating low carb. I have a link on my Instagram, links. If you follow me on Instagram, it's at Zane Griggs Fitness. If you don't, please do. If you're on Instagram, please follow me, Zane Griggs Fitness. But I'll put a link in the show notes as well, and you can get a 15% off your order. Give it a shot. Try 15% off, and see what you like. See if you like them. So see if that works for you. But I highly recommend it for during your fasted period, or you're just eating a low carb diet. You're just going to notice that you feel a little better, because you're actually taking in electrolytes, which are really not present in most people's water, unless you're buying electrolyte, packed water. So move forward. Fasting. So this, again, it creates more reliance on stored fat and ketones for energy. So it will lower your insulin level over time. It'll help lower your fasting insulin level. So, and improve your insulin sensitivity. So since your cells aren't being bombarded by insulin by frequent meals, they become more sensitive to when insulin is released when you do eat. Insulin is a nutrient sensitive hormone. So it's triggered by taking in food, whether it's protein, carbs, and even fat to some degree, not a large degree, very little. But you take in nutrients, your body's got to do something with them. Okay. Insulin's not super active with fat. Again, I admit it, but protein and carbs, much more active. However, we need it for when we do eat, but that's why we don't eat often. So we're not overstimulating that insulin. We need to regain insulin sensitivity. Fasting is technically no food. It is not. Certain foods are fair game. Certain drinks are fair game. Look, water's great. Plain tea, black coffee, those are ideal. Okay. Or water with electrolytes, as I mentioned. If you need to add something to your coffee, just to get it down, 1 tablespoon of cream is about 50 calories. Okay. Heavy cream. That's allowable if you do that once or twice a day, 1 tablespoon. The problem with taking in fat and energy is that you're replacing the fat you should be burning while you're fasting. 50 calories, that's a significant amount of calories. If you're just at your day, you're at your desk, you're doing Zoom calls, you're maybe just running errands, you're in your car, you start putting a couple tablespoons or a couple pads of butter or a bunch of oil, coconut oil into your coffee, you could have very easily have a 250 calorie coffee drink. Okay, you might have to work out for 45 minutes pretty steadily to burn off 250 calories, to add up 250 calories. So think about what you're just about your not lazy, but less than active day. Most of us are, right? Zoom calls, at your computer, you're in the car, maybe you're calling on clients, but not super intense. And you're trying to lose weight. The last thing you need is to add energy calories into your system when you're supposed to be fasting, when you're supposed to be trying to get out of the way and allowing your body to burn that fat. So a tablespoon of cream is enough to take the edge off black coffee, once or twice a day, maybe, if you're having that much coffee. But that's 50 calories. So don't go past that. In my recommendation, don't go past that. If you can do black, even better. But stay hydrated. That'll help you feel better. And keep your schedule as simple as possible. So a lunch and a dinner, no snacks. And if you really need a snack, okay, so especially as you're transitioning this way, because there's a process there. You can, with over 2 or 3 weeks, you want to move towards 2 meals a day, and that's fine. But it's a transition. So know that snack is temporary. You make it protein food. I don't mean a food that has some protein in it. Okay. I don't mean some keto snack or bar or nut butter that happens to have some protein in it. I mean a protein food, a food that is primarily protein that might happen to have some fat with it. Okay. So that would be meat, eggs, and fish, essentially. That's your snack. If you're going to have that snack, it better be something to raise your protein level. We'll get into why. But no nut butters, no nuts. I mean, I've said that before. You can do this. Even in my book, I said you can have some nuts snacks. You really want to get into it. You really want to make it effective. Make what your efforts worthwhile, move you forward, losing weight, go for the protein. Forget the fatty snacks. You don't need them. They're just energy. They're getting in the way of the fat you're burning. When you eat fat, you will store fat. Because you're not going to burn off that much unless you're running, right? If you eat them, or doing a brisk. But even still, why would you do that? Why would you take in fat when you're trying to burn it? When it's just fat, it's not really adding anything. Most fat foods are not super nutrient dense. The most nutrient dense foods are the ones that have, like I mentioned before, eggs or meat, fish, that are going to have your micronutrients in there, in the fat, good fats. But you're getting some protein there, which is what you need the most of. And again, even if you're working out, if weight loss is your primary goal, you don't need to eat right after you work out. Okay. Now, if your goal is greater performance during your workout, in other words, you want to have a stronger workout, harder workout, whatever. Okay. Then fueling around it, fueling for recovery, if you're trying to build muscle. But if your goal is weight loss, then don't make your workout performance a priority. Weight loss is a priority. So yes, you're going to struggle a little bit. Yes, it's going to be harder to do without fueling going into it, or maybe without immediate fuel right after. If you have to have immediate fuel right after because you're lightheaded or whatever, go for the protein. Don't refuel with carbs. You're trying to lose weight. Make that your priority. You get down to the weight loss point you want, or the fat loss you want. You want to focus on muscle. That's a slightly different tack. Okay, then you can add in more protein in the meals and afterward. But trying to tread that middle and do a little bit of both, you're going to have slower weight loss. Let me put it that way. You're going to have slower weight loss. You might put on some more muscle. You're going to have middle of the road result. And I'm saying that's bad. That's maybe what you want. You want to put a little bit of muscle, lose a little bit of fat. If you're trying to lose 20 pounds or more of fat to, focus on the fat loss until you get down there within the next 10 pounds, 10 pounds of where you want to be. And then if you decide you want to go that route, but keep the main thing. And you're trying to get out of the way of fat loss. So that exercise is going to intensify and ramp up the effects of your fast. It's going to increase your need to rely on stored fuel, the fat, right, that you stored. It's going to deplete those calories during the fast, make your fast basically like it's a little bit longer in effect than it actually is, because you've depleted those calories. And so it's much better for your weight loss and for your fast to work out within that fasted period and allow yourself to continue fasted until your first meal. Now, if you want to time your workout to right before your first meal, great, works for you. But don't interrupt your fasted period just because you worked out if weight loss is your primary goal. You want to increase your dependence on that stored fuel. So, and frequent eating just blocks fat burning because it stimulates insulin. And insulin is up, you're not going to burn fat. So until it comes back down. And it could take, depending on how much you eat, 2 to 4 hours before it comes back down completely and blood sugar normalizes. So again, it's the same principles of the frequent eating. The more often you eat, the more you block your body's ability to access that fat. So we want to have as few stimulations of insulin, releases of insulin as possible, so you have more time to burn fat. That's why those meals are actually meals. They're not snacks. You're eating to satiety. You're making yourself eat a good amount of the right food, which we're going to get into in just a second. So that you're getting what you need in those meals, and then you move on and you can stop eating and not be deficient, nutrient deficient, but getting enough to get you to the next meal without a snack. That's what you have to do. You have to eat enough to get you to the next meal. And that may be 6-7 hours down the road. That's normal. Your body should be able to do that without a problem. And then go 16 hours before your next one, next day. That's normal. Your body should be able to do that without a problem. Humans have if they got 2 meals in a day, even a few hundred years ago, that was awesome. Do you think we'd have as many people overweight and obese if majority of people only ate twice a day and they ate whole food meals, not processed food, not snacks, not supplements, whole food twice a day? Logic would tell you you're probably not going to be overweight eating that way on a consistent basis, right? That's what we want to do. We want to correct it with something that's just obviously effective. So what do you eat? Primary food, as I mentioned already, whole food protein. Meat. By meat, I ruminant meat. So ruminant animals, because of the way their digestive system is, they're fantastic at pulling the micronutrients we need, the minerals and the vitamins, out of the food they're eating and getting it stored in their fat and in their meat. Ruminants being cows, sheep, buffalo, goat, deer. You can Google ruminant. You can see if you want a big variety. Simplest bet is beef. Whether it's grass-fed or not, you're still better off than pretty much anything else you're eating. Get some fish in there, get some whole eggs, because the yolk, protein is in the white. The yolk has got some protein as well, but it's also full of some great vitamins, minerals that you need. Eat the yolk, enjoy it, embrace it. It's where the micronutrients are that you want. The iodine, B vitamins, vitamin A, retinol in the form that you can actually use. Choline, fantastic for your brain. You can't go wrong with the egg yolks. Whole ruminant meat, A, D, E, and K. Most of these are fat soluble. Those are all fat soluble. They're in the fat of those animals from the plants that they ate. Zinc, iron, all the B vitamins, animals only. Selenium. Yeah, you can get the majority of your nutrition from red meat, fish, and eggs. If you have to throw in some extra veggies, do a little more magnesium and potassium in there, or supplement for those, that's fine. If you feel like you need extra vitamin C, Okay. The most bioavailable superfood, as far as full of micronutrients, not protein, fats, but the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals we need. The greatest superfood on the planet is ruminant liver. Now, all organ meats are very nutrient dense. Liver's numero uno. It's the best. It's the most superfood. Much better than any plant, any kale or any ragged berries from whatever, mountain they might have come off on. It's beats them far and away as far as nutrient density as well and bioavailability, your body's ability to absorb those nutrients. Much better with animal foods than plant foods. And that's a different podcast to get into. But and then red meat is actually very nutrient dense and much more bioavailable, along with the egg yolks and fish, and whether it's salmon, sardines, oysters, all very nutrient dense, awesome sources of those micronutrients that you can absorb and make use of. And that's where your variety can come from. You have a little bit of liver, just small amounts. You don't have to eat a ton of liver, but small amounts of liver, egg yolk with your eggs, small fish or fatty fish like sardines and salmon, oysters. You kind of got it covered right there, as far as micronutrients, and then everything else just protein. So have the poultry, have the pork, not as nutrient dense, but still plenty of protein, and definitely part of your diet for sure. But if you can, prioritize ruminants, cow, beef, right? Red meats, basically. A little bit of fish here and there, once, twice a week, and egg yolks if you tolerate, if you're not allergic to them. So it's going to be a little bit challenging, or it can be challenging to get all of the protein you need, the whole food protein, in those 2 meals. Okay, that's what you want to do. You want to prioritize the whole food protein, those micronutrient dense proteins, in those 2 meals. Start with as much as you can eat and then build up, really. So the first goal should be at least an 8-ounce portion of protein at each of those meals, and then push it up a little bit at each meal. So 8 ounces would be, that of meat. If you're having eggs, there's about 6 grams of protein per egg. So, and there's about 6 grams of protein per ounce. So if you equate an egg with an ounce, now most people are not going to eat 8 eggs. Some of you might, but if you would do 4 eggs, 4 ounces of protein, that's about equivalent there. Or 3 eggs and 5, you get it. You understand the math there. But that's where you want to start for those 2 meals. So you're aiming for about 100 grams of protein per day as a minimum, as a place to start. And I'll get into that, kind of the goals for that, in just a minute. But understanding that we don't use it just for structure. It's not just about lifting weights and building muscle. It's all of our structure. Bones, okay, whole protein in the bones, folding of proteins in all our cells. It's also used for energy, and we convert it to energy as needed. So it's not like we need a biscuit. You get all that energy all at once, right? Goes right in. You got all the carbs, all the sugar broken down. It's in your system all at one time. When you break protein down, your liver has to break it down and turn it into glucose. It's on an as needed basis, so it's very tightly regulated. You're not getting a surge of it that you have to now manage. It does it as needed. There's a big difference there. So, and the goal I've heard from my nutritionist guests, the one I recommend, is 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight, or pound of ideal weight, if that's what you want to call that. So let's say your goal weight is 150. 1 gram would be 100. So 150 grams of protein. Now, if you can get to 0.8 of that, you get 80% of that, that'd be 120. That's great. That's great. You're doing well. If you get to 120 grams, your goal your goal weight is 150. That's fantastic. 120 grams of protein. That's actually, you're pretty close. You eat a pound of meat and say 4 eggs, you're there. That may sound like a lot to you, but 2 8-ounce portions and 4 eggs in there somewhere, that you can do that. You can do that. And you'd be hitting your goal. You wouldn't be hungry for much else. And you can imagine. But the satiety that comes from the nutrient density, the micronutrient density, as well as all the protein and the fats that come with that, you really don't need any other food. And yet you're still at a calorie deficit. So we'll get to that. I'm going to get ahead of myself again. But it does alleviate the cravings for other food. You're full. Again, plenty of fat that you need for energy, but it's not extra fat. It's not, fat and carbs are still they're truly energy foods. So the naturally occurring fat that comes with the meat or the eggs, fine. If you want to put a little fat on your veggies, olive oil on your salad, some butter and salt on your steamed veggies, whatever, that's fine. That's totally fine. It's great. Not a ton of it, but a little bit extra. Won't add much. But we don't want to add fat as a snack. We're not looking for fatty foods. We're not looking for nut butters to tide us over. We're not looking for keto snacks that are full of lots of fat, some weird kind of fiber, some mystery protein they've thrown in there. Those are not helping you. I know they say keto on them. I know they say low carb. They're not real food. They're processed food. We don't know how your body's going to respond. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it won't. I don't like those odds. I don't like maybes on that. Whole foods, you're ideal. Now, if you feel like you're not able to get to your protein needs, you want to up it, especially if you're exercising, and you get your 2 meals in, you're like, that's about all the whole food protein, all the meat and eggs I can handle, those 2 meals, and you want to supplement with like a protein shake, I suggest making your own. Get a low sugar, no sugar, like stevia sweetened, maybe beef or whey-based protein powder. Make your own with water. Okay. And the idea, again, is not to replace a meal, one of your 2 meals, unless you're at like a last resort, you just can't get food in and you're hungry and there's no food anywhere. Like you're at a point, or you're going to be at a place or a restaurant, something where you're not going to be able to get the food that you need, and you want to make a good choice. Yeah, okay, go with that. But make that the exception, not the rule. Make the protein shake or protein the exception, not the rule, or a true supplement. In other words, in addition to your 2 whole food meals that you're eating the majority of the time, 90% of the time, you have a little extra in that, because you want to get your protein levels up. You want to have another 25 to 40 grams of protein from your shake. Okay, on top of your 100 grams of whole food. Great. I get it. Go that route. Don't let it consistently replace a meal. You're not going to get the nutrients from it, the micronutrients from it that you need. It's not as bioavailable as whole food. It's just not a good quality. It's not as good a quality. But 2 whole meals with 100 grams of protein, eat your shake. Great. That'll get you going. I already told you, pound of meat is about 96 grams of protein. So that's 2 8-ounce portions. If you start eating 8 ounces and you realize, hey, I can go, especially guys, you can definitely eat more than 8 ounces. I know I can. 10, 12 ounces. Fine. Do it. Eat it. Get your 8-ounce portion of meat and 2 or 3 eggs with it. Great. Or a big 12 ounce, you get a big steak in front of you. And it doesn't have to be high ground beef. Fine. Steak, great. Roast. Awesome. Throw a roast in the crock pot and have it ready in 6 hours. Waiting for you. Awesome. Good plan. Find ways to make that available. Work it around your schedule, so you're not having to constantly spend an hour preparing a meal every time you eat. Make a little extra. 6 grams of protein per egg, if you're going to go that route with in addition to what you're eating. Now, with carb intake, okay, we've discussed the protein. The fat is what's coming with the protein. A little bit extra to put on veggies if you're going that route, like put it on fibrous veggies. But the carbs, we want to keep net carbs to 80 grams or less. So go there ASAP. Get to that point right away. Okay. Some of you may need to go lower. You may need to go below 50. Start with 80. See how that works. If you feel like, after a few weeks, things are sticking, you're not really missing too much, go below 50. Go 50 or less. See how that works for you. You might have to play with that. You certainly don't need more than 100. I'd shoot for below 80 net carbs. So that's total carbs minus fiber. That's your net. What you can do is have protein veggies at lunch, protein veggies at lunch, dinner, protein veggies, and one carb serving if you want. So a starch serving, that is, or a fruit that it's equal to about 30 grams or so net carb. So that for most starches, like if you're doing a quinoa, rice, pasta, stuff like that, I'm talking about 3/4 of a cup, give or take. You can figure out what it is for every fruit. It's going to be a little bit different. Use a food app, figure it out what you need for your particular food. And you may have to do it to find out your protein needs too. It's like how much protein is in this. You'll learn to eyeball that. And eventually the carbs as well. But have one serving at dinner, allow you to relax, refuel for the day, but allows you while you're active throughout your day doing your thing, right? You're primarily burning fat. You're not letting the carbs get in the way. So fibrous veggies are fine. That's obviously like broccolis, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, things like that, as tolerated. If you can eat them, they don't, go the steamed route. If you find salads start to bloat you, hard to digest, get some steamed veggies. They're a little bit easier to digest. Again, put some butter and salt on them. It's fine. If you're still hungry, go for more protein. Not more carb, not more starch. Hit more protein because you want as much of that as you can get, as we discussed. Carbs are an energy food. Again, every bit you take in, you got to deal with them immediately. You only have so many places to store it. You can put some in your liver. Your liver holds about 400 grams of carbs. Your other muscles altogether, if they were, total, maybe 1,200 calories. Not a lot. And unless you're exercising a great deal, there's still probably have energy in them already. They're not emptying every day. You only use muscle, particularly energy, glycogen in those muscles when you really use that muscle and use it intensely and long enough to empty it. Liver's constantly emptying and refilling to keep organ function going. But most of your energy is being used by your organs, mainly really your brain, your heart, your liver, and your kidneys are using most of your energy throughout the day. So we want that to primarily come from, as you're trying to lose weight, stored fat. It doesn't require a lot of intensity. You don't need carbs to get those to work. They're just cruising as you're doing your thing. Intense exercise, yeah, use a little bit more. Use up the glycogen in the muscle. That's fine. Again, because to replenish that muscle glycogen and liver glycogen, extra liver glycogen that you need during the exercise, you're just going to tap into fat stores more. You're going to break down protein to replace it, but it's regulated. It's regulated. It's not more than you need at one time. Again, the biscuit, it's more than you need at one time, unless you're like actively running or grabbing a whole banana. Oh, it's fruit. No problem. No. It's just a bar. It's only got this much. Honestly, 2 meals, no snacks, major protein, focus on protein, veggies, 1 carb serving. That will work. That's your simple plan. You don't need the carbs. Your brain does use glucose. You're going to hear that. Part of the mixed messaging. It's a glucose hog. Your body will break down the protein to supplement that once things get going, once you get adjusted to it. Okay. It is a bit of a process for some. That's how it works. Your body will break down protein and supply some ketones to supply those energy needs. Most of your fogginess, lightheaded, it's blood pressure, it's electrolytes for the most part. The first 2 weeks, there's an adjustment. Your body's trying to figure out how to burn fat. Get past that as well as you can. Things will work just fine and eventually become normal. You won't even be hungry in the morning. If you feel hunger, don't freak out. Don't fear the feeling of hunger. Usually if you drink some water, some coffee, it go away in like 5 or 10 minutes. So you just ignore it and know, hey, guess what? I'm going to burn more fat now. My body wants food. It's telling me to eat because that's when it's used to eating. Or I smelled some food, triggered hunger hormone. Someone else was eating something, triggered hunger hormone. Ignore it. It'll go away. 10, 15 minutes, it'll be gone. You're burning more fat. Remember, every time you ignore that, you're going to tap into fat stores a little bit more. Your body wants energy, let it tap in your stored fat. Don't feed it. You don't need food to regulate your blood sugar. That's your liver's job. We'll use the glycogen store in the liver to regulate your blood sugar. It'll break down protein when it needs more. That's why we're eating more protein. It's regulated. So because any excess carbs that you eat and don't use or store immediately in empty muscles or empty liver gets stored as fat. It gets stored as fat. It's not the case with protein. You're not going to store that as fat. So you don't need them for your everyday activities. Again, your Zoom calls, your trips to the store, your calling on clients, you really don't need a high V carb source for that at all. Your body can supply all that when things are running well. And then you're burning fat as you're going about your day. You're not relying on your workout to just be the time you burn fat, or, you're managing it in a way that works with your lifestyle, that works with your daily schedule. So again, we're not looking for high performance in exercise. We're looking for weight loss. Now, again, I mentioned fat that you eat is stored as fat. So nothing is off. We don't treat any food like it doesn't count. It counts for something. It counts for something. It does something. There's no food that doesn't count. You gotta think of it that way. So a fat snack, as I mentioned before, it's blocking fat you normally should be burning. Truly the eggs, the fish, the meat, the fat that's available in those is sufficient source of fat. It's all the fat that you really need because it's nutrient dense, and there's plenty of it in those sources. But we don't need that much fat. Well, there's plenty. The eggs are almost as much fat as they are protein. Certain meats going to have enough fat in them, give you what you need. We don't need to supplement fat. Okay. I know what you're going to read with the keto guys. They're saying go more protein, go less protein, eat more fat. You're going to get enough fat from the protein sources. What happens, to explain this process with the protein a little more, when insulin's low, okay, you can burn more fat, right? You can access body fat. There's two hormones that come out of the pancreas. Probably heard of beta cells. We talk about failing beta cells with diabetes or blocked beta cells. And so beta cells in the pancreas release insulin. The alpha cells in the pancreas release glucagon. They are sisters from the same organ, right? But they do opposite things. So insulin stops fat burning, creates fat storage. Just take excess fuel, move it out of the bloodstream so you don't go into a sugar coma, because you only handle so much sugar in your bloodstream at one time. It's not very much either. When insulin's low, glucagon is released. Glucagon stimulates more fat release, more ketone production, and the release of glucose. It can release glucose from muscles, or it can stimulate the breakdown of protein into glucose as needed to replace liver glycogen or muscle glycogen. Like, say, a stressful event, a workout, going for a run, you're playing soccer with your kids, whatever it is. You're at the park hanging out and someone asks you to lift something. Can you help me get this into my truck? That moment you need intense strength, or you're doing yard work and you got to do something with a little more intensity than just pushing the mower, right? You might release some more glucose at that point, and your body may need to break down some protein for that. That's what glucagon does. Again, it's regulated. It's not a big surge that's going to cause you to end up storing all that as fat. So we allow our bodies to regulate the energy we need by the way we feed it, right? It's resetting those hormones to function properly with giving it the food it needs most, restricting the food it needs least, so we're not storing it in excess. And of course, we have the satisfaction from, we're not that hungry when you eat that much protein, which that's the ghrelin and the leptin. Carbs, when the insulin goes up and down, that's going to stimulate ghrelin, which is going to stimulate hunger. Leptin's a satiety hormone, often stimulated by fat that's eaten. So again, and I wasn't trying to get too nerdy on this, but those are hormones that start to regulate themselves properly when we're eating correctly over a period of time. So, you know, if you're hitting, say, well, this, you know, the 125 grams of protein, that's about 500 calories. Okay. You get 125, let's say you get 125 grams, let's just say ballpark, 125 grams of fat. That's about 1,100 and some change, 1,100 calories and some change. So really, yeah, let's say you had the 125 grams of protein. So it's like the pound of protein plus 4 or 5 eggs. You're looking at about a 1,200 calorie diet. Most people can lose weight on a 1,200 calorie diet. And if you're not hungry and you're eating a limited time period, see, this is where we get to the calories and it starts to make sense. Now, one thing that can throw all this off, I just want to throw this in before I forget. Limit your alcohol to 1 to 2 drinks once or twice a week. Okay. It's going to vary a bit on the person, but most people, if you're drinking 4 or 5 times a week or more, your fat loss is going to be very limited, even if you're doing everything else right. It's not about the calories. When it comes to alcohol, it's not about the calories. Calories can play an effect if you're mixing things in there, but that's not what the effect comes from. So you can't just treat it like extra calories. They are information. Alcohol is information and affects hormones. It affects your liver, affects your liver's ability to manage hormones, to affect insulin, fat burning, fat storage, really, more than anything. And it will convert that alcohol into fat, store it that way. Because alcohol is a fermented sugar, right? So it's going to, in many cases, try to process that, store it as fat, burn it later. Everything else is put on the back burner. So you're just storing it as fat. Limit your alcohol intake, the frequency and the amount. When you get to maintenance level, figure out what works for you, figure out what frequency and amount keeps you at your maintenance level. To get there, to turn the ship around and start really burning and get to where you want to go, got to limit the alcohol. Ideal, it would be none, no alcohol. But for many people, that's just not how they live. That's not part of their social structure. And they personal choice there. But to be effective, 1 or 2 drinks once or twice a week, tops. You'll see the effects of what you're doing. You'll see the benefits. More than that, I can't guarantee it. Do everything else right, you might lose a 1/4 pound a week. And our goal is 1 to 2 pounds a week on average, consistently. So, again, so back to what I was saying, if you eat this way with the protein, the fat naturally occurring with a little bit extra for veggies, you're going to be under eating naturally and not be hungry. And as I mentioned before, the problem with the low calorie diets, because they're spread out across the day, they block fat burning, which we're not doing with this diet, 2 meals a day. And they stimulate hunger because you're constantly eating and you got the insulin and going up and down and ghrelin being stimulated. So you're constantly stimulating hunger. You're hungry. You're under eating. You're blocking fat burning. So you're not able to supplement or make up for those lost calories or under eating or low calorie diet with your fat storage as effectively as if you're doing a compressed eating window and 2 meals a day, primarily eating protein. You can create a calorie deficit that becomes naturally and allows you to burn more fat, or you can create a calorie deficit with a low calorie diet that's spread out that is miserable. You're hungry, you're grumpy, you're not really losing weight too well. Your metabolism starts to drop because it's not able to access the fat to offset the low calorie diet. In this case, you are allowing your body to supplement the calorie deficit with stored fat. You're not going to be as hungry. You're not going to have the impaired metabolism or the big drop in metabolic rate because you're able to take it from stored fat. Much less miserable. You create that third lever of, we put the structure, the frequency, the fasting in place. That's one lever, right? Second lever, macros. We got that in place with the protein, naturally occurring fat, very limited carbohydrate intake. So you're managing the macros. The third how much, the caloric intake, the caloric deficit happens almost naturally. Now, depending on how much you weigh, that's going to have a different effect. How big you are, how much you want to lose. If you're 140, you want to get to 120. Okay, take a close look at what your caloric needs are, and you're eating this much protein. I think it's still going to be effective for you because you're getting out of the way and letting your body burn fat. You're just going to have more energy. So at that size, if you're only creating a 250 calorie deficit, but your insulin levels are low, you're burning fat in the fasted period, you're still going to burn. You're still going to lose weight. If you're trying to get from 200 to 150, gangbusters. You're going to see it at work. Pretty effectively if you're under eating and you're getting 12 30, let's say you're getting 1,500 calories and it's all 1,500-1,600 calories in your protein, naturally occurring fats limited to 2 meals a day. You're good. You're going to see that happen. It may take a month again for those 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, for those hormones to reset, but you start seeing size changes, water weight's going to fall off. All these things start to affect. You're going to see the hormone changes as your appetite changes. You start feeling as hungry. Your waist starts to feel a little smaller, a little flatter. Clothes fit better. Keep going. You're doing the right things. It's just the scale's a lagging indicator, so to speak. It just kind of trails along sometimes. And you might have these times where the stress of the eating or your workout cause you to pull in a little water weight or hang on to some water weight while you're still burning fat. And then all of a sudden, the water falls off. For whatever reason, you relax, you have a good night's sleep, you have a relaxing weekend, water falls off, gets used to the stress of the diet and the maybe whatever workout you're doing. And suddenly you just step on the scale and like 2 or 3 pounds fell off overnight. How'd that happen? It's water weight. It was covering up your fat loss. It was hiding your fat loss from you on the scale. So I often recommend getting a body fat scan when you start, and do that frequently throughout, like maybe once a month, get another body fat scan just to see what's changing, see if you're losing muscle, see how much fat loss you have, how much water is shifting, because it'll show you all those things to make sure you're on track and your body is changing the way you want it to change. The pounds is limited. It's not showing you those variations in muscle, water, and fat loss. It's just showing you total weight. And that's not always telling you the whole picture. So if you can find access to a body scan, scanner that, things you hold onto with hands and your feet on sensors and you're hanging onto it. Some gyms have them, some medical offices have them, but it gives you a full body fat scan, and use the same machine each time so you have consistent results. Use your scale throughout the week just to make sure you're, just see how your food intake is affecting your weight. And you can see some progress or whether you're stuck. You can see how certain changes or things that you eat affect your body, but know that that's not your total. It's not giving you the full story. The scale's not giving you the full story. It's a part of the story. It's often lagging, as I said. So now, obviously, talking about whole food, you've got to have that prepared somehow. It's got to be cooked, right? So if cooking's not something you always have time for, or you're not great at, you want some variety, you can order meals. There's plenty of meal plans out there that offer keto plans. So which would be a low carb, usually have a decent amount of protein. Usually have about 35 grams of protein in those keto meals. So like a service like Trifecta or Factor, used to be called Factor 75. I think it's just Factor now, but Trifecta and Factor are great sources. You might have some local sources that could do the same thing. If you look around, Google around for that. But Trifecta and Factor, nationwide companies in the US, great sources in the US. Decent food, plenty of variety, and it's organic, good source. But get the keto plan. Okay, hear that? Keto plan, low carb plan. You can always add carbs if you really need them, but there's usually enough. Again, this is a plan you can live with. It's sustainable, become a lifestyle. Once you get your goal weight, you can relax a bit, keep the same structure in place. And if you start to go up, you know what to do. Cut back. Here's the plan. I've done this before. You cut back, you take those 5-10 pounds, whatever's creeped up, take those off right away, and then figure out what you need to do to maintain. Keep the protein up. You can allow a few other foods for special events, maybe some more fruit here and there, special dinner now and then. On a limited basis, go off plan, indulge a little bit. But for the most part, keep the same plan, keep the protein levels up again, keep the same kind of structure most days of the week. And if you have to, like a special dinner coming up, like, it's like a anniversary dinner, some kind of event, a party, whatever, and going into it, hey, man, I'm not going to have the best sources going there. I'm not going to have the best choices, but I want to indulge a little bit. I want to be social. Fast before and after if you want, or at least just have protein. Prioritize protein before and after if you know, hey, there might be great protein sources there. Protein that, before, protein only after. Or if you, again, fast going into it because you're going to eat a lot, just fast leading up to it. Skip lunch, make that your dinner, your only meal of the day, and enjoy yourself knowing that you made room for it. And it's not going to have a big effect. You'll get back on plan then, 2 days later, and whatever water weight you put on from that event, it will fall off pretty quickly. You're not doing any long-term damage. It's your long-term habits and your lifestyle that's going to create the greatest effect on your body and on your weight loss and maintaining that. So let's just real quick. I know I covered a lot of little details, a little bit of nerdy stuff in there. Let's just recap the plan real quick. Limit to 2 meals a day, ideally within 8 hours or less. Prioritize whole food protein, meat, as I mentioned, the ruminant animals, but meat, eggs, fish, with some poultry and pork in there as well. But those are your healthiest sources, the red meat, eggs, and some fish. Minimum 100 grams of protein per day. Push up as you can. Almost like make it your job, your focus, your priority to increase protein. But get to 100 grams quick as possible, and then look for ways to push up slowly from there. You'll let your body adjust. You'll be able to over time. It'll adjust depending on your size and your goals, with the goal of a good, again, 0.8 to 1 full gram. So 80%, 0.8 to 1 full gram per pound of ideal body weight. So whatever your ideal body weight is, 80% to 100% of that in protein. Limit your carbs and excess fat. So not fat supplements, not fat snacks. Limit carbs and fat greatly beyond what, and the fat that's beyond the protein. Okay, so you don't need to go for super lean protein sources. Have your ribeye. Have your fatty beef roast, eggs. Enjoy them. But that's all the fat that you really need to take in. Carbs we mentioned, 30 grams with about 3/4 cup of a starch or piece of fruit, 30 grams net carb. Total carbs minus fiber, that's your net. Stay hydrated using the electrolytes if needed. Find some sugar-free electrolyte source. Again, I'll put the link to the ReLyte in the show notes or on my Instagram links, but I highly recommend. I enjoy them. They're great. 50% off coupon by the link. But it definitely makes you feel better knowing I'm getting those electrolytes in. It's not just about pouring water in, which can sometimes dilute electrolytes because there's not a lot of electrolytes in most people's water. But get those minerals in because that's what you're losing most of. You're not eating a lot of those minerals because you're not eating as often. And that's what comes out when you do lose the water weight. It's natural to lose some electrolytes. So replace those electrolytes. How much do you exercise? That's up to you. This will work with pretty much any exercise plan. Remember, the goal is weight loss right now. Trying to build muscle, trying to get faster. That's different goals. That's a different set of goals. That's not what this is about. It's about weight loss, about fat loss. So the more intense you work out, though, the more often, the more protein you will need because that's our glucose energy source, right? Replenishing the glycogen is going to be mainly coming from breaking down the protein and then that small serving at dinner. Get the body fat scan if possible to get the right metrics. If your size starts changing before the weight does, that's fine. Stick with it. Keep going. Your size is changing. That's a good size. It means you're dropping fat. Maybe you're putting on some muscle. Maybe you're storing some extra water because of the stress and the change. It will fall off eventually. It will show itself. Keep going. You're creating a lifestyle. This is not a crash diet. This is not a cleanse. This is not something you're only doing for 3 months. This is your lifestyle to manage your weight and get you healthier long term, as well as lose and manage your weight at a sustainable pace and one that you can sustain going forward and keep so you're not yo-yoing up. 1 to 2 pounds a week, fantastic. That's sustainable. You'll get where you need to go. And really be and your body will adjust to it and you won't be miserable. And that's kind of the point. You won't be miserable. Your metabolism's not going to drop. And you'll be able to, it'll become normal, become your new normal. It may not seem like it right now, may not sound like it right now. It will become your new normal. And you'll feel better. Your stomach will be less bloated, less of that full feeling all the time. And you'll have more energy, more consistent, steady energy because it's being controlled by your body, not at the whim of every time you snack and your blood sugar's going up and down like a roller coaster. So you're looking for me out there besides this podcast. I'm on Instagram at Zane Griggs Fitness. Look for me on YouTube. It's Zane Griggs. You'll find me. You'll see the Hunger Hunt Feast logo on there, but Zane Griggs on YouTube as well, where I post some of these podcasts in video form as well, along with some other videos. But these podcasts are, if you're not already following me on YouTube, you can see these podcast episodes on YouTube as well, on that YouTube channel. So look for me there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Zane at zanegriggs.com. Happy to answer your questions. Or find me on Instagram or comment on them on the YouTube captions. You can put your comments in there and I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm a little slow. I admit I'm a little slow on answering YouTube. I will get better. But please do. If that's your preferred source of consuming content, I am there and I post these there along with a few other videos. So I appreciate the follow and the subscribe. Have a great week.